Welcome to the Oh Hell No podcast, where Kay Nicole delivers a daily dose of inspiration by discussing passion, purpose, and struggle with people who are living their best life doing what they love. Here's Nicole.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Oh Hell No podcast. Today I have Stephanie Moore. She is an author and a Gallup certified strengths coach. Did I say that right?
You did. You did. It's
okay.
I know.
Great. So welcome, Stephanie. Thanks for being here with me today.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So the first thing I want to jump into is, how did you figure out that helping people discover and affirm their unique gifts and talents was what you were supposed to be doing?
Oh, wow. Start off with the hard question. I think it's been something that's been with me all my life. I actually had a few situations early on that kind of opened my eyes to the fact that it's not easy to try to figure out where you're meant to be and what you're meant to do. And I had a couple of experiences where people tried to direct my path for me, and that just didn't work. And so I realized as I kept evolving in this process that you really have to stay true to what you know about yourself, and find the right people to help you. And that's really where this all came from, kind of my own personal experience and those around me.
So how did you discover, though, that it was a strength of yours to help people, direct them in the right direction?
So it's funny. I was in a job that I absolutely hated. And back in those days, it was not a job suited for me. I was a senior manager of a call center doing financial spreadsheets every day. And it was just not something I was enjoying. And I looked around and saw that there was nothing out there at the time really around the area of career development that could help guide. And so I went on a search for support and resources and people that could help me. And I ended up interviewing with a couple of big outplacement firms, the firms that help people when they're in some sort of job transition. And I went in on an informational interview with the number one at the time, the biggest global outplacement firm. And the senior vice president was the one who met with me. And she said, tell you what you're going to do. You're going to go quit your job, and we're going to use your training skills, and we're going to teach you career development. And that's what lit my fire when I got involved with that organization and started to teach people and these were people who had been laid off. So they were feeling a bit hopeless and really not knowing what they were going to do next. And to see people go through that process and come out the other side, so much better than when they came in, really just encouraged me to pursue this field.
I love that. I love how you went looking for one thing and it was like what you were supposed to do kind of found you, I love
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it's so funny that you started with that story, because my next question was, what's the worst job you've ever had? And what, if anything, can you say you learned from it and applied to your current work?
Oh my goodness. Well, I actually write about it in the book. So I had a glimpse of something I really wanted to do early on. My first job out of college was for a phone company selling residential phones as a telemarketer. And our first week on the job, we went through a week of sales training. And I remember this woman walking in. She was wearing this red suit, and she was vibrant and funny and engaging. And I had this glimpse of, wow, that is something I would really love to do. And I remember going to my boss and asking her, how do you get into that field? And her response to me was, oh, you don't want to do that. I've done it. It's exhausting. You'd hate it. You have to travel all the time. And she basically just shut me down and dismissed me. Mm-hmm. And I finally got a good manager who helped me develop the training skills. And from there, I ended up at this financial institution as a training manager, but also as a manager of a group of telemarketers. And that's when all of the things that I really didn't like to do, I only got to do the training a little bit of the time. The rest of it was handling customer issues and employee issues and spreadsheets and all these things that just did not pull from my talents or strengths. And in about the third year in, I was turning 30, I found that I had my first ulcer. And from there, I started having these unexplainable headaches and nosebleeds. And my husband said, you need to get to the doctor, which I did. And the doctor sat there and asked me all these questions about how much stress was I under? How long had these symptoms been happening? How much stress was I feeling? And as I look back on those 3 years, like all these, memories kept coming up of how many times I had gone home crying and just so frustrated. And so he looked at me and he says, I have your prescription, your diagnosis and your prescription. He said, you need to go quit your job because it's literally killing you, is what he said. Wow. And that was my wake-up call. That's where I said, wow, I had no idea I had gotten to that point.
Wow, that's crazy. So it seems that you took the training stuff from that because that's what you enjoy doing the most, and all of the other stuff was just, part of the task and the journey, but, not really for you.
Right, right. I quickly learned what I love to do and what I didn't love to do.
Yeah, sounds like it. So how do you stay focused on all things positive? Because I think it's very hard. Like, I try to be a positive person, but sometimes negative thoughts just creep into my mind and take over for maybe 20 minutes. And then I go back and forth with myself with these negative thoughts. And then, then I'm back to being, happy me. But how would you say that you stay focused?
Well, I think, I struggle like anyone else. I think, for me, I could say I'm 100% positive, but it's like what you just said, it's that you recognize it and that, I think what has helped me in all of this is being more intentional. So I try to put practices in every day that at least get me off to a good start. So in the morning, I do try to spend some quiet time just setting an intention for the day and looking at the day through the eyes of gratitude. I don't always accomplish that, trust me, but I do try to do those practices. And at the end of the day, spend some time reflecting on the things that happened that were great, the things that frustrated me, and then just what I'm grateful for. And I find that the more I do that, it just becomes kind of my mental model, if you will. But it's not easy. It takes, I think, intention and just being thoughtful about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So give us an example of setting an intention for the day. What does that look like? Just give me a basic example of maybe a Saturday intention. Like, what would that sound like to yourself?
Well, I have kind of a mantra: put me where I need to be, help me meet the people I need to meet, let me be of help to someone, kind of putting out the intention of service and gratitude, and to look at every situation as a gift, whether it's the person who cuts me off, while I'm on the road, to really just put them in a certain space, kind of have that mindfulness that I want to see the moments that I encounter as either a learning opportunity or as a gift. Now, again, I set those intentions. I try to be mindful when they're happening. Doesn't always work, but that would be something I would try to do every day.
Nice. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. So when did you start writing? You have a book out called The Gifted Journey. And I want to know, when did you start writing this book and what led you to write the book?
You have great questions.
Oh,
this book was a 5-year labor of love, I guess I would say. I started it because, and I'm not a writer. I'm not a professed writer. I just felt that this was inside of me and needed to come out. That's the only way I can explain it, that I needed to get it out on paper, the process that I had experienced. And the reason why it sat on my desk for 5 years is because behind me in my bookshelf, there's probably over 100 books on self-help. And I couldn't imagine what this would offer anyone any different than any of these other books. So I literally stuck the manuscript on my desk and would look at it every once in a while, and then eventually picked it up and came in contact with this amazing woman who had her own publishing company. And she looked at it and said, I think you need to do it. And so that's what I did. Once that decision was made, it was done in about 6 months. from that point.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. So tell us about your actionable 5-step process designed to help readers discover, discern, dream, design, and do. Give us a high level of that.
Okay. Well, these just really model the process that I've seen repeated over and over again when anyone is looking at figuring out who they are and where they're going. And really each of the steps are important to build on each other. And so the first step is really the discover part. And that's just learning as much as you can about yourself, your journey up to this point. What have been the highlights? What have been the down times? What has brought you energy? Where have you felt strong and confident? Where have you felt more frustrated and drained? All those moments in your life that led up to this point. And that's, I find that just to be able to spend that time really discovering and assessing yourself is key. The second step, discern, is really taking all of that information and looking at it from an objective perspective, like really evaluating it, kind of putting your lab coat on and really kind of an arm's length approach to say, okay, here's, as I'm looking at this person's history, here's what's good and here's what we can leave behind. So the discernment is really peeling away the experiences and looking at them to decide what stays in the past, what comes with me to the future. And then the dream is really about letting yourself just let go of the boundaries that can sometimes contain us. The people who in your life maybe said, oh, you never want to do that, or no, that's not something right for you, where you can kind of step back and go, remember back when you were young and you could dream and you thought you really could do anything and you really did have these dreams of things you wanted to do, kind of tapping back into that energy and that ability just to dream about possibility. And then as those things start to surface, that's where you get into the fourth step of design. And that's really just putting these small steps in front of you to get you down that path just a little bit further. It's not a big grandiose plan, but it's like, what am I going to do tomorrow? What am I going to do next week? Who are the people I should be connecting with to learn more? And do I have a mentor? Do I have a coach? Who are the people that I should be creating as my board of directors, if you will? And really that plan becomes then a real livable document. And then the do is really, what do I do to keep myself motivated to make sure that I'm doing these daily practices that start to create a habit of self-sustainment, really, that now I don't really have to think about it. I know that choices I make for my life are going to be informed and based in my solid knowledge of who I am and where I want to go. So the do becomes kind of my motivation to keep moving forward.
Yeah, I like it. So everyone seems to have a message of motivation these days and inspiration and, let's live our best lives and all this stuff. Even me, myself, with my podcast with passion, purpose, and, struggle.
I know. I love your podcast.
Oh, thank you. So how do we focus and find the right message as individuals and kind of figure out what works for us or what will work for us? What would you suggest to people?
As far as what would work for them? Well, I can honestly say, and that's why we say it's a unique path. So everybody's path is different. I do think if you spend the time and invest, whether it's in these steps or whatever does work for you, it's where you can really, live a full life. I guess I don't know how else to say that, but I would say the intentional part of it is the thing for me that is important. It's deciding that I'm important and I'm worth it to spend this time really figuring out what my unique offering is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I heard something yesterday that it was like a sermon this girl was giving, and she was saying that, we all are here for a reason. Like God wasn't just bored and decided, I'm just going to make this person like everybody has a job to carry out, and it's just, you got to find it. And I thought that was so, good. I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing that, everybody has something to do. You just got to figure out what it is that you're supposed to do.
That's exactly right. And I do, part of my experience has been on the faith side, and I've helped people look at spiritual gifts and and that is I do address that in the end because people may not start there with that bigger belief, but I think as you get into this journey more and more, you start to realize that once I've answered some certain questions for myself, the questions get bigger and deeper. Like, really, why am I here? And what am I meant to do? And was really kind of the whole purpose of the book, was to start people in a safe place where we're answering big spiritual questions in the beginning. But I think as you go through this, you start to ask those deeper questions about the why,
Yeah. Absolutely. That's why I started this podcast, is because I was asking myself, what is my purpose? Like, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? Like, it has to be more than just going to this 9 to 5 every day. There has to be something else. So I totally get it.
Well, can I ask how you answered that for yourself?
Well, I started doing this podcast. First, I was just talking to myself, just talking about my day. And then I was like, man, it would be so cool to talk to people who are actually, doing purpose work and how they found it and how they're, making their way and to, get some inspiration and some ideas from them. And then I was, blessed enough to find people to share that information with me. So I feel like I am on a journey to finding my purpose, and through, stories like yours and other people who have come on my podcast, it's helping me and possibly other people out there who need to hear these things to kind of get to their next level. So
that's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thanks. So it's really cool. So I appreciate you for coming on this podcast. I really do.
Well, thank you for asking.
No problem. So, what would you say is a sign that you are not living up to your fullest potential?
Well, there are some great signs. First, are you happy? I mean, that's the first one. Are you feeling joyful? Are you feeling satisfied? Are you feeling strong? The other sign would be, do you instinctually gravitate towards what you're doing? Is it something you would do even if you weren't paid to do it? Is it just something that gives you such joy, you want to do it? The other sign would be, do you have a need to grow in that area? If you think about school, what were the things that you just naturally gravitated towards, where you want to learn and you want to add to that experience? And then basically you just feel satisfied in what you're doing. And again, it goes back to the feelings of feeling strong versus feeling frustrated and drained all the time. And I told the story about being in that one job where I was really miserable. I think it's hard sometimes when you're in the midst of it to know how miserable you are until something happens. And then in that moment for me, I turned and looked, and there wasn't really a lot out there to help me. And I think that was another motivation for me, is when people get there, they have to have some sort of a life preserver. They have to have something that's out there that says, okay, here's something that can help you at least get through this transitional moment and get you started on a path. That wasn't there for me. And that's what I was hoping to provide in this process.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I wanted to do a little advice section. So
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a question for different people, I guess, transitioning in different parts of their lives, and what you would tell them.
Okay.
So for young people starting out, like going to college, you're 18 years old and you're going to go in and you're going to pick this major, maybe because your parents told you to do it or your friends said this would be good, but you're not really sure, you're nervous. What advice would you give them for just starting out and how to kind of manage that anxiety and kind of figuring things out?
Well, first, I would strongly encourage them to do some of their own self-assessment, right? So there are a number of tools out there. Gallup, the same company that I was certified in as a strength coach, has one for college students called Strengths Quest. And Strengths Quest is a great tool for students to uncover their top talent themes, the things that are innate in them, and start to get that self-knowledge. So and I would talk to a career counselor, obviously, to get some of that assessment. But then I would say start to form a coalition of people that you really trust, that have your best interest. For me, it was my high school counselor, and it was a few of my teachers who really seemed to know me well and have my best interest at heart. I think starting to discern the people who are helpful versus the people that want to guide and direct you into their own path is really important at this stage in your career, and then, or in your life. And then when you're looking at colleges, once you have that, think about what environments are going to be important for you to thrive in, and the type of people you want to be around, and does the area of study exist, and does it flourish in that environment. So those would be some of the things I would start with.
Cool. Okay. So what advice would you give a mom or dad who has been out of the workforce for years, because they've been, staying at home, raising maybe some children, but they're getting back out into the working field and they're not sure where to start?
Again, I go back to that first step of, if you haven't had a chance to really assess yourself, right? So what has been enjoyable, maybe even looking back before raising a family, what were you doing? What were you enjoying? But then as you were raising your family, what were some of the things that you really enjoyed? What are some of those, what I would consider transferable skills that would be as valuable in the workplace as they were in the home, and how can you build on that? And what new experiences might you want to look at? But again, going back to, what do you know about yourself? What really, and that's where I would get the dream step would be a great place to spend more time to think about, where can I tap back into some of that excitement and energy that I might have felt earlier on.
Yeah, it seems like self-awareness is very important.
It is. And Nicole, I find it's just fascinating, as many people as I've brought through career development workshops, how many have done no self-assessment ever in their life. I mean, not even a Myers-Briggs or a, whatever, they just have never done any self-assessment, and they're already in their mid-careers, and so it's so hard to do this in a vacuum and not have done those steps.
Yeah, absolutely. So, here's my last one for the advice section. So, What advice would you give to someone who has been doing something for years and is miserable and wants to change, but is afraid of how to go about doing something different because of maybe they don't have the education, or they're a lot older, so they feel like they won't get hired? Just all these other variables going around in their head. Like, what would you tell them?
Again, there's lots of different strategies, but what the first thing that comes to my mind is going back to that personal board of directors, having people that are in your network that can help you in those moments when you are feeling frustrated and stuck. I think of mentors as those people who are there, to not only coach you in an area of expertise, but they're really there to open up opportunities and avenues of thought. A life coach is another great avenue of somebody who can help you think through your process and can ask you questions that can maybe unstick you as well. But just, again, starting to focus on what you can do versus what you can't do. And it's the small, and that's why I say in that design step, it's the small things that you can do that make you feel like you're getting momentum. And I think that can be very motivating for people.
Okay. So, ego. Now, yeah. I've been obsessed with ego lately because I've been reading this book by Eckhart Tolle.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I've been obsessed, and I'm I have to ask everyone their thoughts on ego and how they keep their ego in check, and what advice you would give to people about the ego overall.
This is so funny. You're the second person today who's brought this subject up. Well, so what's interesting about ego is sometimes we get it confused with humility. or the other side of humility, which is super ego, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important that people have a sense of self, right? And a sense of where they feel strong, and not to let humility get in the way. Because if you look at it from a God-centric perspective, to have humility is to deny the gifts that God has given you. And I think there's something very calming about figuring out who you are. I mean, I think it helps keep the ego in balance when you have that self-confidence of knowing your path, right? It's people who don't know their path that tend to be, I think, ones with bigger egos that need those egos fed because they're still searching and there's still an insecurity there. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Mm-hmm.
So I think the further you get down this path, the more self-aware you are, I think the more you settle into yourself and the more at peace you are with who you are.
Nice. I love it. So what does success look like to you?
Wow. Well, success to me at this point would be to continue to evolve what this is. So for instance, for The Gifted Journey, the book itself was never meant to be by itself. I really do believe in the process. So something that we're doing. Are you talking success for me? Let me clarify that. Are you talking about success in general?
Success for you personally. Like, what do you identify as success in your life? Professionally, personally, however, it manifests for you. Like, what is success to you?
Well, I think it's getting up every day and feeling like I get to do work that makes me feel like my gifts and my strengths are being used, to the fullest. I feel very blessed right now that I do get to do work that for me is very meaningful. And my hope is that I never tire of it, that I keep finding ways in which to build on what's already been put out there. So yeah, success for me is just, again, and it's gratitude. It's a lot of gratitude in things that have happened and what is in my life right now.
Okay. I like it. So do you feel like you're doing your purpose work? And if yes, what exactly is it?
Oh my goodness. I needed to mentally prepare for this. It's funny. I'm sitting here looking at the cover. I don't know if you have the book right there, but the picture of the butterfly.
Mm-hmm, yes.
And my grandmother was a lover of butterflies, and none of the family knew this until after she passed away. And it was the person who used to come to do her pedicures told us that she loved butterflies. And my grandmother was my spiritual director. She was my spiritual guide. And when I needed a touchstone, I just went and sat in her presence, and I felt like I was experiencing God. I mean, I can't explain it. She was the most wonderful spiritual person I knew. And I always wanted her to feel proud of what I was doing, and that somehow tapping into her values and the way she lived her life. And so when the graphic artist sent over the picture of the book, I almost fell over. He had no idea about my grandmother or my love of butterflies. And so when I saw the cover, I thought, okay, this is a sign, that we're on the right path. So I just feel like I'm at a point in my life where I trust the path now. I don't have to question it anymore. When things are put like yourself in my path, I say yes to everything, because I just have a belief that it's there for a reason.
That is so amazing. I love that story. Oh, God. And my mom, she loves butterflies too. So I get it. That is so cool. So, is there anything that you want to do but have not done because you're afraid?
Afraid. That's well, I don't know. I don't, at this point, I don't know, because we're still kind of imagining and dreaming, where this is going or what we can do. We're going to start offering retreats starting next month, and we've rolled out, and there's the fear that no one's going to want to come to these. I don't know, but we're doing okay. The first one is almost full, so that's a good thing. But there, we want to just provide what we can, and just not quite knowing exactly what that's going to be yet. And even if we did create it, would anybody be interested? So I guess there's always that fear that you hope that what you're doing is meaningful and valuable. And so I guess that would be it.
Okay. So this is the Oh Hell No podcast, and I always ask my guests to share an Oh Hell No moment that they've had. And I would like you to share an oh hell no moment that has taught you something or changed your perspective on something. And of course, an oh hell no moment is something that makes you stop and say to yourself or out loud, oh hell no. It could be positive, it could be negative, but it's definitely a moment, and we all have them constantly.
Oh, that's so funny. I was blank there for a minute, but then as you kept explaining it, the first thing that said, oh hell no, I will never go back into management. I loved being in leadership, but I also realized that wasn't where my truest gifts are. But I made 3 attempts at being a leader in my life, and every time I do it, I'd go, oh hell no, this is not what I meant to do. But now I teach leadership development because I know there is such a gift that leaders bring to their people. So that would be definitely, I hope that I'm able to stay self-employed, and that would be my dream for the rest of my career.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that you realize that that's not your path, and you stepped aside from that, but you can train other people to, be the best managers that they can be, because that's really such an important position. And if you don't truly love it and have the passion for it, you're doing a disservice to other people,
That is very true. That is very true.
I applaud you for that.
Oh,
it was such a pleasure talking to you today. You are so sweet and so amazing, and I'm glad that you're doing this work and you're helping people discover their passions and their purpose and figuring it all out, because it's not easy. And the earlier you can discover these things, the better off, for you, because you'll have more time to really get up every day, looking forward to doing whatever it is that you're doing. So, yeah, I really
thank you. Well, thank you. And thank you for what you're doing. I just loved getting to know a little bit more about your passion and your focus, and that we're kindred spirits. So thank you.
Aw, thanks. So tell us where we can buy your book and how we can keep up with you and find out about your retreat and all these great things that you're doing.
Absolutely. So if you just go to the website, which is www.thegiftedjourney.com, we have the retreats that are coming up. We have our coaches. We have a whole group of wonderful strengths coaches that are there to help one-on-one with people. And you can get the book off of there, but you can also just go onto Amazon and find it there. Yeah.
Great.
It's all there.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe and rate the show.